So in this video, I'll be painting this image from Morgue file, link in the description. First, I started by mixing as many colors as possible so I can spend more time blending instead of mixing. Mixing beforehand has also definitely helped me stay looser because I don't have as many things to think about. Now, I got the colors pretty right, but I did make some minor changes as I painted and started to experiment a bit with some of the colors, which is the next thing I want to focus on now that I've gotten the hang a bit of painting loosely. Also, you can see here I mixed some very warm grays. I forgot to do it at the start, but later on I mixed some regular grays, which were much cooler in comparison, and those are important later for helping these look warmer. Now, lately I've taken to starting with a colored background, but since this skull is on a white background, I'm leaving it as is and going straight into the sketch. Usually I use burnt sienna, but since there are very few dark areas, I'm sticking with yellow ochre so the lines can disappear as I paint. And like last time, I drew the border of the image on my canvas paper to help get the correct scale. I've actually gotten quite fast at doing the drawing. This only took 7 minutes. Before I might have traced if I was feeling very lazy and only in the mood to paint, but now it would take more time to actually set things up to trace than it would to just draw them. Also, using paint instead of pencil makes it feel more like painting. Now here I started with the eye socket because it drew my attention, but I probably shouldn't have. As I usually do, I start a bit tight. Also in this case, I put too much effort into adding all the values, which made the socket seem too dark. I should have started with the midtones like I switched to doing here, but at least I realized this early on. I also struggled with the front of the face. I retouched both the eye socket and the front of the face quite a few times. There were a lot of green tones here that confused me. I would paint these in, but then it would look too dark to me. Adding a bit of color variety helped with the eye socket, as there it was more a matter of color texture, but the front of the face was mostly green with some yellows, and that still looked wrong no matter what type of highlight color I used to add texture. Eventually, I fixed it at the end by glazing some thin strokes of white here and there to add that sort of translucent glow bone has without changing the overall value too much. That helped add texture without making those textured areas pop out too much, which was what just adding white to the paint did. Now, I left the lines of the skull and the very white highlights for last. I tried to make the dark lines as broken and thin as possible, and then after I blended over them a bit with some thinner layers so that they aren't so prominent. I only leave a few spots here and there really dark, and only really in the areas that are more in shadow. And here I'm messing with the front of the face a bit more, trying out a large glaze to lighten things up. Now, once the majority of the skull is done, I start on the background, and I'm using that warm gray for the bottom half of the painting, and then also here and there, there's some even warmer grays where the light is bouncing off the skull and onto the ground. But until this point, those dark warm grays still look quite cool. But as I move up the side here, I'm slowly transitioning to a real gray, and even the lightest areas are still white with a touch of black, so that white still looks cool. This isn't very noticeable on video, but if you look at the finished image, the top area is cooler than everything else, and it really helped to add a bit of dimension to the otherwise static background. Now, as I did the background, it was a bit hard to maneuver around the teeth and other areas that stuck out, so I ended up painting over them, and here you can see me adding them back and refining them with my round brush, which I try to avoid unless absolutely necessary. I also then finish the background and add some glazes to blend the shadows a bit. Then finally here, those white glazes I talked about, and the video cuts off before they dry because my camera ran out of battery, but here in the finished painting, hopefully you can see how they helped. So this is the final image. It took about 2.5 hours in total. One of the fastest paintings I've done out of my last few, and also my favorite. It's for sale if you're interested, details in the description. Otherwise, if you have any questions, leave a comment. If you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Also, be sure to check out my Instagram for daily drawings and previews of what I'm working on. And if you want to help support me, I have a Patreon.